Welcome to On the Right Side of History with Kansans for Life. Come with us as we connect the pro-life movement's past to present, uncover hidden or forgotten history, and its connections to the battle still raging today. Now, here's our host, Danielle Underwood.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Danielle Underwood, and today I'm in the studio with Mark Houck, pro-life activist from Pennsylvania. Father of 7, who was found not guilty in federal court after being prosecuted by the federal government for supposed violations of the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. Mark is in Kansas as featured speaker for the Wyandotte Olathe Pregnancy Clinic Life and Hope Banquet. Steve Wisdom, board president of Wyandotte and Olathe Pregnancy Clinic, also joins us. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, so glad to have you here. This is a real honor. I'm very excited to meet you. Just obviously, we've heard so much about you in the news.
Sure.
And you've been such a fighter. And so this is a real honor to have you here. And I know that you have been benefiting the pro-life movement really kind of in the background for a while. So we're glad to have both of you here. So thank you. And Steve, we're going to talk a little bit later about the work of Wyandotte and Olathe Pregnancy Clinic. But if you're good with it, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into Mark's story. We'll start there. Okay. So Mark, you have been a committed pro-life activist for over 20 years. You've been peacefully praying at an abortion clinic for that time and really, for the most part, without any incidents
Sure.
that to speak of. So take us back to that day that when you really, your life got started on a new path and you really became, it was the beginning of a long journey where you became you were put into the spotlight really on the national scene.
Right.
What
Right.
happened that day?
Yeah, I'll never forget it. It was October 13th, 2021, and my wife and I made a decision to take our oldest boy, who at the time was 12, that whole year as a homeschool boy on a Wednesday every week down with me to the Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia, Center City, Philadelphia. It's about a 2-hour drive with traffic, but it was a great day for me and my son. We'd go down and have 2 hours in the car, 4 hours at the clinic, and then 2 hours back. So a wonderful father-son bonding experience. And Mark had been with me many times, probably about 40 vigils prior to this October 13th. Wow. So he knew what he was doing. I knew, he was comfortable there. Well, on that particular day, it was kind of strange. The escort, who is a volunteer at Planned Parenthood, who I've known for 20 years, I've known him, we know each other, we've talked many times, decided to harass and badger and bully my son. After repeated requests to tell him to cease and desist, he wouldn't stop. It got to the point where I said, man, you got to stop. And eventually he didn't, and he kept coming after my son. And we had a bit of an altercation, which is nothing more in Philadelphia than a shove on the sidewalk, which, not to belittle it, but, it happens every weekend at the Philadelphia Eagles game and the Phillies game. So it wasn't a big deal locally. It was just a local matter that was handled on the local level, and everything was dismissed. In fact, the gentleman didn't even bother showing up for court. That's how it all began. But 5 days later, I returned triumphantly to the sidewalk because they banned me from going to the sidewalk. And then I was served a target letter by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And this was on April 27th, I believe, 2022. So about 6 months after the original event. Well, the target letter says that you're a target of a federal grand jury investigation under potential indictment. But nothing really seemed to have teeth there because I wasn't blocking the entrance because they were going to indict me against with the FACE Act, which is Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, a bad law which we'll get into. But nonetheless, I was nowhere near the entrance. Nonetheless, they did indict me, but we didn't think that was going to happen. In fact, the Dobbs case hadn't even leaked yet when I got the target letter. Of course, that happens in early May. Dobbs is overturned in June. And then fast forward to August, we have Mar-a-Lago and we have Joan Andrews Bell, other pro-lifers getting arrested. And for me, I said, well, they're not going to do anything to me because my case is way different than theirs. That all changed on September 23rd.
And then what happened September 23rd?
Well, September 23rd was a Friday morning. As a homeschool family, we go to co-op every Friday. And it's a great day for the family. We're all leave. I teach a class, homeschool family. We're all involved and we're all excited. I'm up early, about 6 a.m. Around 6:30, 6:40 in the morning, dark o'clock, in fall in rural Pennsylvania. There's a heavy bang at my door, and someone yells outside the door, "Open up." Now, and then rings my doorbell repeatedly. Now, everyone's asleep except me. I'm downstairs making breakfast. I got a quiche in the oven when I prepare the family for the day, but everyone's asleep. So I'm like, I should go grab my gun, right? Because when someone comes to the door at 6:30 and acts like that, that's probably a bad guy at the door, right? Well, thankfully, I didn't own a gun. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here today. When I went to the door, I said, "Who is it?" Because I didn't know. And they said, "Open up." They banged again. They rang the doorbell again. "Open up, it's the FBI." So I said, "Stay calm. I have 7 babies in here. Please stay calm." And Cardinal Gerhard Mueller came to my house about 2 weeks after this from Rome, and he said, tyranny and dictatorships have arrived when they wake sleeping children in the middle of the night and arrest their father at gunpoint. And that's exactly what happened. And all my kids were held at gunpoint. I was, of course, held at gunpoint. My wife was held at... This is all M16 gunpoint, big, long rifles that your great Senator Josh Hawley made sure that he pointed out to Merrick Garland that this is how they handled it. About 20 to 30 federal agents, Pennsylvania State Troopers, Bucks County Sheriffs, where I live, and Philadelphia PD were all on my property. 10 marked and unmarked units, pistols drawn behind all the doors. Couldn't believe it. You think you were a drug lord or something, or I don't have any criminal background. I'm not a flight risk. I'm not a threat to the community. If this is how our government, the weaponized DOJ, is coming after people, and they arrested me on the spot, obviously, and to this day I've traumatized my children.
I was just going to ask you, how did your children respond?
Well, I mean, they all have PTSD. We all do.
Yeah.
I mean, you get pulled over by a police car, for something innocent. The alarm and the bells and the sirens really trigger all of us. Someone comes onto the property unannounced, we're all triggered in some way. So, I mean, you don't know the effects on a little child who's 4 who can't express themselves, or 8, but, I know what it affects on me. And when I was reading my 72-page lawsuit, I hyperventilated 4 times because it was that traumatic just reading it. So we're all kind of getting through. Kids are resilient, and God is good. His grace is sufficient, but it definitely was traumatizing.
Well, I can only imagine, because I don't know about you, Steve, but I had an incident where my kids were with me in the car, and I got stopped because I was going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, and they still talk to me about that day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does leave a major impression with that. And when you're a good family, a good parent, you're not used to having any kind of negative interactions whatsoever with law enforcement. So I can only imagine how shocking and how scary.
Well, how
that was.
Confounding, because police officers are supposed to protect you, and they arrest bad people. Why are they arresting my daddy? Very confounding, as you said. Just confusing. Like, I don't understand this. So it's still there to this day.
Wow. So then what?
Okay. Well, they took me away from the family. Didn't give me a chance to say goodbye to them. I was arrested within minutes. With no warrant. They didn't produce a warrant till I was already in custody. So they kind of went about it in a very poor way. I went down to the federal building in Philadelphia, which is about 100 yards from where the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution was drafted. So, ironically enough. But anyhow, I'm in the federal building, and they're fingerprinting me and mugshot me. But then they decide to cuff me in my ankles. They shackle me. They decide at that point to belly shackle me. And then they bring me to a white room, much smaller than this studio, and chain me to a table for 6 hours with my wrists. I'm like, thinking, what is it? Why are you doing this, right? I'm in your custody. Is this really necessary? For 6 hours, they just wanted me, I think, to get enraged. But I say this often, but I was at the foot of the cross. I was at Calvary. I had perfect peace. I prayed without ceasing. I was in a place that was just a beautiful place of joy, of forgiveness, of love. And, I rejoiced because I knew I was suffering because I was doing something righteous, right? And so blessed are those who are persecuted, right? For theirs is the kingdom of God. And so I was in that space. And my will and God's will were perfectly united, Danielle. So I had peace. I didn't know when I was going to return to my family. I didn't know when I'm going back. But, I just surrendered my kids, my wife, all to the Lord. And I said, you're going to have to take care of them. And you know what? Whatever happens to me, so be it. After about 10 hours, I was released, and I was brought down to U.S. Marshals. And you think the shackles and the belly shackle, they'll all come off, right? Because you're going home and you're innocent until proven guilty. No, they keep it on you. And they kept it 6 flights of stairs all the way down. And then I said, you know what? This is not about justice. This is about humiliation, intimidation, instilling fear in pro-life America. And I said to the federal agent, I said, do you have a cross for me to carry? Because I felt very much like I was on my own Via Dolorosa there with the Lord. He said, I don't have a heavy cross for you to carry. I said, well, it's coming. I was facing 11 years in prison, $350,000 in fines, and 3 years supervised probation. And at DOJ, when they come after you, that has a 98% conviction rate. So you're going to prison. And this is what you were facing, and we had about 4 months till that trial to deal with that.
I just keep wanting to say, and what next? What next? I feel like every
time. It gets worse.
Yeah. Keep going.
Well, I will, and I need to just give that trap door because it's a lot to take in,
it
right?
Is. It's very scary. It feels like almost a movie. I mean, really, truly, someone may end up making a movie out of your life at some point because it's just so shocking to us to think that our government might weaponize against. And,
sure.
This would be a perfect time for me to bring this up because,
sure.
It's so obvious to us that you were targeted by the federal government for your religious and pro-life views. And I was just recently reading an article by Tom Brecka with the Thomas More Society, and he was pointing out that, really the FACE Act was written and passed 30 years ago, not just to protect access to abortion facilities, but also to churches and pro-life pregnancy centers. But yet, 97% of all FACE Act prosecutions have targeted pro-lifers. And even beyond that, at the same time, we have to remember that we've seen an 800% increase in the number of attacks on churches since 2018. And we've had at least 90 attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers like Wyandotte and Olathe Pregnancy Center since 2022. So, I mean, the disparity is so evident, and it's just we have to know this. It's not going to be reported to us in that way by our media.
Sure.
So it's really incumbent upon us to continue to talk to people about this so that they understand what we're up against.
Well, and what you need to know, the Thomas More Society represented me in this case. And their lawyers, Peter Breen and their team, presented to the judge the first day of trial that we began on January 24th, which was my crucifixion date, and I'll get into that. But they said when Ted Kennedy wrote that law in 1994, he was asked on the House floor by Senator David Durenberger from Minnesota, does this apply, this law, this FACE Act, Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, does this apply to pro-lifers, volunteers, and escorts outside the building? Does it have any application? And Ted Kennedy said it absolutely has no application. So they've been misapplying it all along to the pro-lifers they're going after. We made that case to the judge, but the judge allowed it to go forward because he wasn't going to overrule all these other rulings that's been used against pro-lifers. That would be precedent that maybe he wasn't willing to set. But nonetheless, we had 4.5 months to the trial. So the Lord gave me a vision that weekend after the arrest. I remember it was a Friday when they came for me. He said, you're going to walk your own way of the cross. You're going to walk the stations of the cross. And you're going to go to the State of the Union. And I'm like, what? I don't get like visions. I don't have locutions or anything. But I was at the State of the Union in February that following year. Wow. And I didn't know why I was there, but I was there. But I did carry the cross. And tonight at the banquet, I'm going to go through that process, that journey. But suffice it to say, it was real time. I experienced taking up that cross, going before the judge, first station, right? Because there you are. You're before a judge. Pilate, for me, Judge Pappert. But we carried it all the way to January 24th. And it was quite a journey, and very dark at times, and very joyful at times. But the whole world, as you mentioned, came out in support of us, and we had people from all over the world reaching out to us, loving on us, praying for us. It was overwhelming.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
I know that we certainly were here, very much in prayer with you, unified. Yes. So, the eventual outcome.
Right. Yeah, well, look, we even to the day when the jury came back with the verdict, I thought I was going to be found guilty because, again, everything's stacked against you. Unfortunately, you have to recognize that. Your audience needs to know that the government came in with a plea deal. The government doesn't have to offer pleas. In fact, they never offer a plea because they usually win 98% of the time. They offered me plea deal on January 6th of all days, like 2 weeks before the trial. I'm facing 11 years in prison, 3 years supervised probation, and $350,000 in fines. They said no time, no fine, no probation. That's a sweetheart deal. You take that deal if you get that deal. Just plead guilty to the assault charge. I had an assault charge, which is a catch. You know, they're trying to get you to get the felony on your record, so that when they can come after you again, they're going to put you away even longer. And I said, first of all, I'm innocent, and I said I'm not taking that deal. But my attorneys were like, you should take this deal. Even Thomas Moore, you should take this deal, because I'm facing 11 years as a dad of a 2-year-old baby and a 13-year-old son, all 7 kids, you know, like that's the gap. Maybe you could consider this. Go home and talk to your wife, they said. I go home to Ryan Marie, whom you just met. And I said, Ryan Marie, they came in with a plea deal. She said, oh, yeah, what's that? I said, no time, no fine, no probation. She said, and I'll just plead guilty to the assault charge. And she said, well, you're not going to take that. I said, I'm not. She said, no, because you're innocent and you're not a coward. And I didn't marry a coward. And she said, secondly, Mark, should you want to take that deal, because I can't make this decision for you, I want you to know I don't want you to bother coming home. You're not welcome here. We don't have cowards in this home. Stay in mission, husband. We got this. In other words, she's a Spartan woman. She sends her man off to war, to mission, and says, come back with your shield or come back on it. And then she says something even better, Danielle. She says, and we need to do it for the good of the pro-life movement. We need to do it for the movement. We can't abandon the movement now, because this is case law. If we take this plea, that's a case law, that's a conviction, and now they're going to use it against sidewalk counselors all across the United States. So we had to hold the line. We had to double down, and we had to be all in. So I came back to my attorneys and I said, no deal. The government couldn't believe it. Everyone takes that deal. So we rolled the dice, and we trusted in the Lord. And on January 30th, a verdict of not guilty was rendered, and it was unanimous. It had to be all 12 jurors. So praise God, you know, we didn't know it was going to happen, but we trusted that, again, God would provide regardless of what would happen. We knew it would be for the best regardless of guilty or not guilty. And, of course, I knew I was not guilty in the heavenly court. So I had that consolation. The earthly courts may not feel the same way.
That was a massive act of faith on your part. And I just want to say that you have an amazing wife. Seriously, that is, I mean, and I'm a big believer in both strong husband and strong wife, and sometimes, you know, having that kind of confirmation from your wife is very essential to have.
Yeah.
You got to have the strong husband who's backing up the strong wife.
Sure.
So, and vice versa. So, but your path hasn't stopped there. So you got the not guilty verdict at the end, and then you decided, you know, some people would be like, okay, that was enough for 10 lifetimes. That was enough excitement. And I'm going to go back to just being, you know, doing my quiet, prayerful, peaceful sidewalk counseling and being there for the women. And that's a wonderful, beautiful thing to do. You did not choose to do that. You chose to go forward and continue speaking out. And also you decided to run for Congress. So you really put yourself out there. You continued to put yourself out there into the public spotlight, knowing that your story was very powerful. It was very galvanizing for the pro-life movement to see, first of all, you step out in faith in that way, and then to see that you were, of course, given that not guilty verdict.
Right.
So I guess my next question would be, what do you say to the person who is sidewalk counseling right now, or who is somewhere at the forefront of the pro-life movement, or, you know, maybe even as just being a pro-life voice at work, and they're seeing the direction that our country is heading, and it's frightening to them.
Sure.
Or it's, you know, maybe they're considering pulling back on some of the ways that they're speaking up for life. What would you tell that person?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in our Philadelphia area that after my acquittal stopped coming out to the vigils. You know, they were afraid. They're afraid. They thought, you know, what happened to Mark's going to happen to me, and yet we had a good result. You know, yet still they were just very, very reticent. And I think that's been true for a lot of places. It's hard to get people to allow themselves to be stretched and inconvenienced, and people see of government coming after you as a major inconvenience. I would say to those that are thinking, you know, well, maybe I just need to temper myself a little bit more and not have the zeal that got me into this pro-life movement in the first place, because that's why we get involved, because we have righteous anger. Well, I got to encourage them to stay the course, be not afraid, to trust in the Lord, and to know that even in the midst of this suffering, and it was great suffering, there was great consolation. So the Lord doesn't give you like a Good Friday without an Easter Sunday, you know, but you got to have the two sides of the sword there. And so I think when we're doing something good and we're doing something that we know is right, that we're going to be stretched. And that's good for us. It's good for our faith. It's good for our lives. It's good for our journey as Christians. And, you know, it's something that I see as maybe the most important thing that's ever happened to me outside of my marriage and my children's birth. You know, that pivotal, that crucial, that important. And the battle we're fighting and Steve's engaged in is one of the most important battles in the world today, primordial battle of our time, and it's pure evil. And we need good people. And again, that God's grace is sufficient in the midst of what comes against you.
Yeah. It really is like the pro-life movement is being tested through fire right now in some cases. Yeah, being purified. That's a good way to put it too. Just curious, do you think that there need to be any laws passed to protect people like you from discriminatory prosecution? Is there anything that can be done or that you are involved in now? Sure.
Well, I mean, I think the FACE Act needs to be repealed, and that has to go away. It was bad law from the beginning, and that's just the first thing that has to be done. I'm in the midst currently right now of, after we were acquitted, we said, well, we need to hold the government accountable. So we're in the midst of a lawsuit against the government. So that's precedent setting, you know, to sue the government. It's very hard to sue the king. The king has sovereign immunity, but when he breaks his own rules, like the Constitution, he has to be held accountable. And so we're hoping that through this lawsuit that we're using through some great Kansans lawyers, Todd Graves and Eddie Grime out here in actually on the Missouri side, but these guys are helping us fight that good fight, and hopefully through that'll set that precedent, and we can get those laws passed once we start having the government, you know, accountable or taking responsibility for what was wrong. And now we can bolster that with some good legislation to say, no, these people have rights, and we need some sort of an act that's going to protect our rights, not just the First Amendment, but something else, because clearly they're violating the First Amendment. They're breaking our rights as First Amendment right holders. Like, you know, they're taking it away. There's bubble laws and all this stuff that totally takes away your First Amendment rights in certain states. It's like, it's wrong. It's not what our founding fathers wanted to have. So we got to begin with the lawsuit first, and then we'll move into hopefully some good laws from great legislators like Josh Hawley or some others.
So your underlying message to the pro-life movement is keep going.
Stay the course.
Yes,
for sure.
Keep going. So Steve, your organization decided that Mark would be the right speaker for your banquet tonight. And tell us why you decided to bring Mark in.
Well, you think about Mark's cause and all he went through, as he mentioned, it's just incredible challenges he was put through, but he stayed the course, and he really set a great precedent for everyone else in the cause to stay the course, just as he mentioned. So we're very proud of him, and he's managed his way through that, and I'm sure the Lord may have more trials for him in the future, and certainly with the current administration. And so I think it's really important that we demonstrate that to 880 people that would be present at our banquet, and to encourage those to stay the course and to be strong, continue to donate, continue to pray, support those who are in the good fight for life.
Yeah, we really are in the human rights struggle of our time.
We are.
So tell us why you first got involved in Wyandotte and Olathe Pregnancy Clinic.
Well, I've been in the pro-life area for many, many years. I'm a Knight of Columbus, and I've been a pro-life advocate for their organizations in the past. I had someone that was on the board that encouraged me to join, and so this would have been about 8 years ago, and I joined the board and enjoyed being part of the cause. And really, more importantly in the board is really looking at the frontline people. You know, we're just in the background, which is where we need to be in terms of supporting the people on the front line, the advocates that are advocating for women that are in need, and the medical staff that they work so hard each and every day on the front lines. And that's the real heroes in the process. Our goal is to guide and help with the operations and provide support for all those frontline people. So that brings a lot of joy to me, and to see that and what they go through and the ups and downs every day. Mark talked about PTSD. I can only imagine what they do when you see someone that you've worked so closely with decide to move forward with abortion. But then they have the victories on the other side, and that's the ones where they decide to keep the child. So it's very exciting. It's painful to see the one side when you lose and the other side when you win. But we have so many great stories about a lot of great wins. And so you just got to, like Mark said, just fight the good fight and keep everyone focused on where we're at and don't back down.
And one of the things I love about Wyandotte and Olathe pregnancy centers is the great diversity you have among your staff members. I think that's wonderful, that they really do represent the just the community around your centers.
Yes.
And just wonderful, delightful, joyful people. And I think that that's so essential because true joy is really found in our movement. True love is found in our movement. And I think in particular, the people I've met at your centers really have exemplified both of those characteristics. So I don't know if you have anything you could share about those communities or any kind of changes you're seeing in those communities.
So both communities, they're Wyandotte is in KCK, and there's a certain level of clientele there that we have to manage to and make sure that we have good advocates there that can speak the languages and things like that, especially in Olathe. We have about a 40% Hispanic population that is coming in to our clinics. So we have currently 7 people that can speak Spanish, and that's very important to make them feel comfortable and be able to communicate and advocate for them. So and then we have a very diverse client base, and we need to be able to touch base with each one of those and make them feel welcome.
And you really do that. We just recently had our annual day of service, and so I know that you all were one of the sites where we brought volunteers to for that day. And so just Mark, to let you know, so this is an annual day that we've been doing. This is just the second year, but we had 22 pregnancy centers across the state that participated, and it was a real joy to get to be involved with you all again. And the other centers, I mean, there's I can see that there's good camaraderie that's beginning to happen between the centers as they really are supporting each other, the work across the state, and just some beautiful things happening, all in the service of supporting women to be able to choose life for their babies, give them more support, just any kind of assistance they need. It's really a beautiful mission. So, is there anything you would want to share with the pro-life movement to keep us encouraged as we keep going forward?
Well, I think, again, when you have the type of resistance we've seen, especially again out of the current administration, that you do exactly what Mark said. You got to double down. You got to fight back. You've got to stand your ground, and you got to do that in a very peaceful way. And you try to do all the right things. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, we had to invest quite a bit of money into our facilities just from a security standpoint, for our employees and for our clients. And there's things like that we'll do to protect the people that are fighting for life on both ends, with our clients and again with our employees. So you just got to take the proper steps to be prudent in the way you approach things and do it as peacefully as possible. And I always say, one of the greatest conversions, when you think about it, have all been peaceful movements, whether it's been MLK or Gandhi, and you're going on the list, Mandela, they did everything peacefully, so we have to take the same approach, to prayer and dedication, and to stay the course.
Excellent. Mark, anything that you want to share with us as we're wrapping up today? Anything additional?
Well, I just thank you for what you're doing, and continue to fight the good fight, and what you have. I'm just so grateful to be invited here, and I can't wait to share with the folks tonight the journey, because I think it's a very compelling one, but it has a lot of encouragement. As dark as it is, there's great light, and I think that's what I would close with, is that my story is dark, and but the greatest darkness brought the greatest light, and that was our Lord's death and his life. But I think in the midst of this suffering that we're all going to kind of endure, whether it's under this administration continually we got to prepare ourselves that hard times are coming. We wanted to overturn Roe, but we have to see that that was just the beginning of the battle. I think a lot of us thought it was over. No, we're just getting started here, folks. So, and the evil one, he's aware of all these things, and he's not happy, and so he's gonna come after us, and he preys on fear. And so be not afraid, as I said, but just know that even in the midst of that darkness, even when you get that unjust suffering, even when you get that, that persecution, that there's always great light. And I think that's the message I'll close with.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for being two valiant men in this struggle, this human rights struggle. I know sometimes we hear from men that they're not sure if they have a place within the pro-life movement, or they're told that they need to not have an opinion. And so it's really inspiring to me to see strong men who are standing in the gap and working to protect life and also provide resources for women. That's so essential to this battle, is making sure that women have access to those resources, the help they need, the information they need to be able to choose life for their babies. So thank you both.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey there, listeners. I bet you know others who would love to hear this podcast. So take a second and hit that share button, or grab the link that you used to get here and send it on. When you click to subscribe on this platform, you'll be among the first to hear about future episodes. So don't forget to do that too. And 2 quick reminders: if you are a coffee lover and you want to try 7 Weeks Coffee, which is the only pro-life coffee company that donates 15% of its proceeds back to pro-life organizations, you'll find the link on our website, on our homepage, and that will send 15% of the cost of your coffee purchase back to Kansans for Life to help support this podcast and the rest of the important work we do. So visit kfl.org to learn more. Until next time, never forget, the pro-life movement is on the right side of history. Stay strong. The truth will overcome. Thanks, friends. See you soon.